Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming on sacrificing your trick-or-treating in order to hear poetry. It is, of course, an enormous honor to have Amiri Baraka here reading in the Roberta C. Holloway Poetry Series tonight. And it's also a great pleasure that he is going to share the evening's bill with Michael Bigley, who is a graduate student poet, or what we like to call a poet scholar, here in the English department of UC Berkeley. My name is Lynn Haginian. I'm on the faculty here, and along with Hillary Grafendijk, am the co-curator of the Holloway series this fall. We have one more reading in the Holloway series this fall, and that will take place on November 15th, again at 6:30, again in this room. And it will feature visiting poet, also from the East Coast, Rachel Levitsky, who comes from New York City, and she'll be reading with poet scholar Jillian Osborne. I want to announce, before we begin this evening's event, two other campus-related events that Mr. Baraka will be participating in, both of which happen tomorrow. At noonish, I think it's at 10 minutes after 12, he'll be reading in the Lunch Poems series, which is in the Morrison Reading Room in the north side of Doe Library. That also is free and open to the public. That reading is always jam-packed, so if you're going to go for a second time to hear Mr. Baraka, try to get there at more like 5 of noon than at 10 after. The other event that is taking place tomorrow is in the evening at 7 p.m. in the Unit 1 facility, which is on Durant, just below College, and I'm afraid I don't know the address, but there's posters with Mr. Baraka's face on them all up and down the corridors of Wheeler Hall, and you could just write down the address and go to that. The doors for that open at 6:30, and the event begins at 7. And then I also want to tell you about another event which happens on November 8th in San Francisco. And actually, I'm going to grab Sorry, I didn't come entirely prepared to the podium. At 7:30 on Thursday, November 8th, Mr. Baraka will be in performance with Roscoe Mitchell, who is one of the greatest living saxophone players of today. He was a member of the Chicago Art Ensemble, comes out of the Chicago scene, has done a number of projects of his own, plays all the saxophones, and much to the pleasure of those of us who are involved, even if only by marriage, with the improvising Bay Area music scene, he is now teaching at Mills College, where he's already making a huge impact on the students and the music community generally. So there are postcards advertising that November 8th event. That event is sponsored by the Poetry Center of San Francisco State University. And the postcards look a little bit like this. So just grab one if you're interested. And also, I'll post a poster advertising the event outside my office on the 4th floor of Wheeler, outside of room 406. All right, about tonight's event. Michael Bigley, as I said, will be reading first, and he's going to be introduced by Ann Meir. And after Michael Bigley's reading, Zbigley Lee, another poet scholar, is going to introduce Mr. Baraka, and then the evening will belong to Amiri Baraka. He has agreed to do a brief Q&A after the event, but I think it should be brief. He just flew in from New York City. He hasn't eaten, and it's already like my bedtime in New York, so we won't work him to death on his very first few hours in Berkeley. All right, Ann Meir.
Thank you. It is my Very special pleasure tonight to introduce the young poet, Michael Bigley. Michael is a first-year student here in the PhD program in medieval lyric poetry. Michael has pretty much spent his 31 years of his life split half and half between Northern California and Missoula, Montana. And he has his BA in English from the University of Montana in Missoula, and additionally a MA in English literature and an MFA in poetry. Michael's poetry is place set, as you will hear, and you will hear those places in it. He's also can be found, quite a bit of his poetry can be found online, but it could be difficult to find except because he writes under a name, Michael Zbigley, which is his father's family's name before some of the ancestors decided that they would do better anglicizing it. So you can find Michael's poetry and a number of pushcart nominations online under Michael Zbigley. In addition to being a poet, as we've heard, Michael is also an excellent literary scholar. He's also an incredibly fine musician, and he's my son, and I'm very proud to introduce him. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as Lynn said, it's obviously an honor for all of us to have Mr. Baraka here, and so much more so for me to be able to read here today. With that in mind, I'll try and not overstay my welcome. As Anne said, these are all place poems. These are all specifically Montana poems, so it'll be like a vacation for you. I'm singing roads, the grass. We started out striking these leafed up streets, scabbed, choked by sick old lawns, the dirt right up to pavement. The city says we get curbs the day we make 'em. Then the older road from town, scuffing canyon walls, the truck stop and the mill. Pines bent round the freeway exits, stunting hard-edged sedges in their shadows. Then the divide and descent. The feeling that here you fall into a world of grass, of road, the freeway soft almost, laying down in prairies. Curves so gentle in summer shimmer, I coast onto reservation blacktop, riding on the radial tire roar of America, ride through it just like that. The black road, this story, this beginning, singing with the kids and Jimi Hendrix on the sputtering FM from back in Billings, pointed east. I'm out to understand something about this whole big West, the dirt, the snakes, the coyotes, the crystal meth and pit mines, strip malls, strip clubs, Custer County and crazy horse malt liquor, border patrols and water rights in my hometown, back there a day behind me, and the kids just have to ride along and listen, and you, I guess, had better decide right now. Democracy. Back home, I hear, they're building little concrete roundabouts in all the residential bits of town. I should say we are, right? There were meetings, I am sure, in my opinion, should I happen to have had one, would have been duly noted. I'm sure our actions are universal in their beneficence, or at least they keep us looking busy. There are, worse things that could be done under my theoretical signature. I hear, in fact, there's a war on. This poem's called Fireworks. Fuck yeah! And running toward me up the low rise away from the river. I don't know how long's the fuse on this thing, run! And the fire follows them up. Behind them, the flashing flume draws the outline of 3 men and, fuck yeah, freedom! The figures reabsorb into the night. The explosion cracks a red and blue head, trailing white tendrils down into the weeds. I'm thinking 6 days, guys. It's July 10th. They've stopped to watch halfway up the rise. I'm standing up here listening and thinking, 231 years and 6 days. The men have gone back down, and how about this one, eh? And 3 days ago, 4 bombs split London from the belly. I'm trying to get this arithmetic down while they sound again the official cry, and another one goes up. I'm trying to figure what I'm doing walking around an Indian town up in the far north of America, counting days and watching the sparks sputter out in the dry grass. Archaeology. We can say buffalo. We can say Indian like it means something. We can make it mean something. Those who got, long ago, their own story wrong made sounds we remember wrongly, the echoes smothering in the soft earth. Other sounds are just sounds. The collection of pops and grunts that is bison, that is Northern Cheyenne, are dug from the same mud of alien language. On rainier days, the bones rise almost willingly. Today, the sun has packed the ground to stone, and odd bits of old bison sweat in the makeshift shade, exhausted from trying to contain the history we give them. We can call all of this a buffalo jump. Say we understand the intention of some people who never left but come out on clear days to ring the site and see this collection of bones driven into the red ground by our imagination. We can all stand together in the earth shade when the sun sets at 11 p.m., watch the heat shimmer up from our square-drawn grid, and say, I think I get it now, I do. This poem is part of a longer series that involves lots of Spanish and Latin quotations that I thought I wouldn't butcher in front of you tonight. So when this poem refers to Pedro, it's referring to Pedro Salinas, a 20th century Spanish poet. It's entitled Apologia for the Election Night, that being the 2004 election in this case. I'm sorry I didn't explain myself. I wrote the poem last night drunk. Pedro and I had some whiskey and some words about the current administration. His feeling was that everyone lives on the land of their country, which is a tongue, and the free are always waiting to be thrown off. I love this idea. I am living on that fleshy wave, crouched, fingertips on the wet surface, waiting to be flung into the air by an exultation. I lied. I composed these words to a steel-belted thrum, arching last summer across some American highway, racing west towards the huge glaring face of a god. Pedro left Spain in 1936 and wrote this poem in Baltimore in his native tongue. I am thrown off and flying. I wrote these words to the slap of my shoes on the sidewalk after the bad news in a small town in Montana at 1:45 in the morning, going for another drink. When I crossed the wooden bridge over the river, I heard a weak squawk, and I said, "Oh, a heron." And he flew, great, blue, wings tucking in to dart between the cables of the bridge. And I said, "Good night, Pedro, good night. I choose your flight along this river of tongue, your wings flinging out again as you clear the wires. I choose this flight lifted off the land, the confusion of every voice and all their truths." On buying lunch in Indian country. On the porch of the chicken coop, the only restaurant in Lame Deer, Montana, the heart of the northern Cheyenne Nation, 3 old men roll cigarettes in the shade. Blocking the door, a dog rolls half over, his skin pink beneath the hair, his wet red cock sliding out towards the hot street. Greasy smoke sticks to the rafters inside, the fry bread and frozen chicken strips, the canned mushrooms and dripping onion rings, the red and white paper napkins on the rough wood table. This is the heart of a nation. A second-hand garbage truck clangs along a pitted street. The old men's faces shine dark as the table. I wait a minute in the door, but there is no border I can cross. My hand in the haze, holding out the limp, folded dollars, shines in the fluorescence. The smell of ammonia leaked in from the laundromat in the next room, opening me up. So I turn back, lost immediately in the street's glare, the halo that washes away the door frame, even as I walk through it. The men haven't moved and say nothing, leaning farther back, settling their shoulders into the concrete wall. I'll read 2 more here. This one, a love poem, because there ought to be one, right? It's called Ghost Farming. The irrigators drape their long fingers across the folded fields. They move with gracious patience, the slow hand of a lover wanting to leave himself in every pore. But they are driven by the same pressure they spill into the ground. There is no person present. All the water that pushes them, pushes out, draws bright green lines across the pallid dirt, has come a long way from some far river, trailing down some far mountain, owned by some far man who owns more earth than he could walk in a week, owned by lines of credit stretched from here to your dinner plate, dear reader. This makes me think of love, for I am driving all day to touch a woman I have come to know as the land I spread myself across. From the moving car, the pipes reveal patterns cross-hatched on the fields. As each line approaches, a certain angle turns the steel into a burnt strip that waits in my eye for the next to fill it. Tonight at dusk, I'll watch my fingers' shadows deepen into her skin. Watch what ghosts we raise together out of those hollows, those fleshed furrows. I see the poem I brought for the last poem is not the poem I thought I had brought for the last poem, which really went well with that one. But that's okay, because this one will kind of tie back to the beginning, and we'll finish strong, right? It's good to have some shape to these things. This is called Real Wild West. Is this the West, or my dream of the West I'm driving through? A freeway full of faces, everyone bored, smoking, squinting into the sun settling into the horizon, spread over the whole flat distance ahead of us. On the long straights, the semis swagger and show their teeth. The scarred little buttes nod as we fly by. Prairies all turn to crops, crops all left to seed in the sun. A late model Suburban in the passing lane, pulling ahead up the hill at 90 easy. Wasn't that you? Wouldn't that be me if I could have it? I'll take everything on this side. That side's yours, up to the blistered horizon of waving wheat. When I reach into the empty passenger seat, grasping for something salty, wrapped in cellophane, bought under fluorescent lights in a truck stop with a casino in the back, and in the back of that, a throbbing of lights, and half a dozen poor girls ready to drop their filmy slips for a greasy dollar bill. You turn to me and grin from under your sunburnt eyes and say, "Saddle up, asshole, we're writing." Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zbigley. I'm a graduate student in the English department. It's not only out of deference to this department here that I begin with Ishmael Reed, but so it is. Reed has written that Amiri Baraka belongs, paradoxically, in a category of, quote, geniuses who are hard to classify. The irony here, of course, in Reed's praise is that of our great literary iconoclasts and cultural figures, it is perhaps only Reed himself whose stature is comparable to Baraka's. Amiri Baraka's influence is simply astonishing, and I think Reed is right, difficult to classify because of his impact within and between so many eras, whether they be black arts or post-colonial periods, and in so many fields: jazz poetry, African-American oral poetry, the Black elegy, jazz studies, Black cultural theory, American surrealism, and expressionist drama, to name but a few. Still more, the ubiquity of his name, texts, and doings within emerging fields, such as Black power studies and hip-hop studies, is both symptomatic of his recently past entry into various canons and emblematic of his continued relevance to generations coming after him. To boot, there's the work of grassroots institution building, which continues to benefit from the community-rooted Black arts ethos, of which Baraka was a seminal part. We simply have no other figure like him. Central to Baraka's aesthetic experimentation and judicious cultural analysis has been his poetry. Indeed, from 1961's preface to a 20-volume suicide note to 2004's Un Poco Loco, published here in Berkeley by Ishmael Reed's publishing company, Baraka's iconoclasm has been most readily evinced through his poesy. A page of that most recent chapbook reads, quote, "We are trying to figure out where we are, and we ain't gonna ask you." This expression, shot through Baraka's corpus, is often misunderstood as reactionary and purely attitudinal, and some observers might object to its implied politics, one which resists categorization in predominant paradigms. The paradox of Baraka's work in our present moment seems to me that while questions of canonicity seems to be less and less prevalent, his work remains largely misinterpreted or poorly understood. This is very much the case in mainstream media, wherein the restaging of Dutchman at the Cherry Lane Theater just earlier this year was tabbed by the New York Times as, quote, artless art, while the New Yorker centered the play's central trope of race as, quote, taboo. How could any thinking viewer analyze the sublimations of Clay's anger on the humdrum register of taboo? We saw the same types of reviews of last year's release of Baraka's collection of short stories, Tales of the Out and the Gone. We could, of course, write off such glib pronouncements as the prattle of the public sphere as distractions to the work of academic exegesis. But it seems to me that such a strategy, while necessary at times, is in some fundamental way against the spirit of Baraka's poetry, the kinetic orality and persistent provocation, all meant to be public. Besides, these casts of reactionary voices in the public sphere have, as it turns out, material effects too, such as on the precious public institutional spaces that remain, as we witnessed 5 years ago in New Jersey. So in our reactionary and self-congratulatory time, critical vigilance is in order. But this guarded retrospective assessment, of course, is at one and the same time beside the point, since we have Amiri Baraka in the flesh, thinking and fighting, continuing to evolve as an artist. A defensive stance on our part seems ultimately unnecessary, since his exacting and fiery voice is with us, quibbling with even the most sympathetic critic's sense of how to place and read his work. As Haki Madhubuti has recently written, Baraka always come in a place later, rushing to catch words that came before him, though that don't much matter. Him got his own words, music, dance, dramatics, and bright ideas, even if some of them used cars and don't work. But Baraka works harder than 15 men his age, do, who've been around long enough to tell his time in places where people have tried to beat the beat and tempo out of his talk and walk. Monk, Tran, and Duke played secrets that saved him and us, even if we didn't accurately hear their do's. Baraka did. They spoke musically to him. He gave us his many languages and genius. His coming in time is getting better and best and less late, even for this sage, still making up stories, acting on his own stage and firing truth poems that compel liars and politicians to exit early and often. And so it is my honor to introduce Amiri Baraka.
Thank you very much. And thank you for those poems about the West. There was a friend of mine, Ed Dorn, used to write about the West all the time. You should read his work about the great unknown America that nourishes the worst of us and the best of us at the same time. You know, Africa. Africa. Go back, black, see yourself. Touch yourself, know yourself. Mighty, ancient, beautiful Africa. Creator of the human being, of speech, of music, of the city, ancient, beautiful Africa. But when you put your hand on your sister, made her a slave, watch out, Africa. Watch out, Africa, the ghost's gonna get you. Mighty, ancient, beautiful Africa. But when you put your hand on your brother, made him a slave, watch out, Africa. The ghost's gonna get you. Ah, how did I get it on my back? In the dark, with the wind and water blowing through my ears. How did I get it on my back in the dark? Oh, Batala, Shango, save me, save me, save me, save me, save me. My brother the king sold me to the ghosts. You know my brother the king, Secretary of State, Supreme Court Justice now, my brother the king, sold me to the ghosts. Oh, Batala, Shango, Isa, save me, save me, save me. How'd I get here on my back in the dark with the wind and water blowing through my ears? At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, there's a railroad made of human bones. Black ivory. Black ivory. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, there's a railroad made of human bones. Black ivory. Black ivory. Wise, if you ever find yourself somewhere lost and surrounded by enemies, who won't let you speak in your own language, who destroy your statues and instruments, who ban your boom, ba-boom, you're in trouble. Deep trouble. they ban your boom ba boom, you in deep, deep trouble. Probably take you several hundred years to get out. We were slaves, 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 we were slaves. At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, there's a railroad. George Bush made of human bones. Black ivory. Black ivory. When I was a kid, I used to read a lot of Chinese and Japanese poetry. I was a weird little kid living in Newark. And so I came across something called a haiku, which I thought was very hip. So I created an Afro-American form called a loku. You don't have to count the syllables. There's no syllables because we don't have the time to count the syllables. So I always do this to a music by a great composer and pianist named Bud Powell called Un Poco Loco, a little crazy, Un Poco Loco. Bam 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 da 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 da. Catch 27. The real problem is you don't know the real problem. Dun, 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 dun. Deco instruction, or why the Negroes say that art is not connected to the world. Morgan Freeman, Evening Slave. Dun, 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 dun. Before fortune was money, finally everything points to the people and things we understand. Understanding is a point of view. If you look, what looks down from that point. If it is the sun, okay. If you see it, better. If you don't, okay. But for instance, and there you go across the sea to be with the devil. The preparation for pain is minimal. For joy, a lifetime. The preparation for pain is minimal. For joy, a lifetime. Is that fair, we ask? Is that fair? You mean a fee, a circus, or white people? Bam, 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 da, 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 da. Class gas for those who knows. Class gas for those who knows. Since the rich eat more than anybody else, it's reasonable to assume that they are more full of shit. Dun, 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 dun. Locomotive. The devil said he left heaven because there were too many niggas. That's why he started Europe. Dun, 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 dun. Geobolical. According to the devil, when he was first thrown out of heaven, he landed in England. I believe him. Dun, 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 dun. Loku for Bush 2. The main thing wrong with you is you ain't in jail. Dun, 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 dun. Animal scientists. Have you ever looked up at the buildings, then looked up at the sky? Ba, 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 da, 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 da. Culture. European Jews say the devil speaks perfect German. Black Americans, on the other hand, say he speaks pretty good English, too. Ba, 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 da, 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 da. The new testicle. The first thing we got to get, said the devil to the latest peddler of his soul, is a much larger needle and a much smaller camel. Dun, 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 dun. Loku. Craziness is no act. Not to act is craziness. Heaven appeared with property, God with slavery. Heaven appeared with property, God with slavery. Adventures in negrosity. A Negro tried to cash himself for money at a bank. He got arrested as a counterfeit nickel. Dun, 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 dun. Was it ever so quiet the room began to ask you questions? Bam, 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 da, da, da. Silent night. Whenever the devil is disguised as God, he is called Santa Claus. Dun, 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 dun. Question with no air. Why are they so crazy? 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 Dun, 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 dun. Locu for so what? They asked him the difference between insane and outsane. He said, you know the difference, that's why you're asking. 2 days later, they came back. He had left a note. It said the same thing. That's when his picture went up in the post office. The caption read, wanted for any reason you can think of. This meant they really did understand. Bam, 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 da, 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 da. Locu linguistic for chute. In Mandarin, the word bush means dumb motherfucker. Dun, 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 dun. In the funk world, if Elvis Presley is king, who is James Brown? God? Dun, 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 dun. It's a good question, though. Do 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 do, do 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 do, bo do 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 do, bo do do do, bo do do do, do 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 do, boom be da ba da, boom boom, be dee 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 bo. Do 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 do. It's called funk lore. That's a blue monk. Ba da da da, ba da 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 da, ba da 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 da. We are the blues ourselves. Our favorite color. Where we been, half here, half gone. Ba da da da. We are the blues ourselves, the actual Guineas, the original Jews, the first Caucasians. Beep, 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 dee, da. That's why we are the blues ourselves. That's why we are the actual song. So dark and tragic, so old and magic. That's how we are the blues ourselves. In tribes of 12 bars, like the stripes of slavery on our flag of skin. Ah. We are the blues, the past, the gone, the energy, the cold, the sawteeth hotness, the smell above draining the wind through trees. The blue leaves us black, the earth, the sun, the slowly disappearing, the fire pushing to become our hearts. And now black again, we are the whole of night, with sparkling eyes staring down like jets to push evening's ascension. That's why we are the blues. The train whistle, the rumble across, the invisible coming, drumming and screaming. That's why we are the blues, and work and sing and leave tales and is with spirit. That's why we are the blues, black and alive. And so we show our motion, our breathing, we moon-reflected soul. That's why our spirit make us the blues. We as ourselves, the blues. Do 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 da. Do 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 do. Race or class. Race or class is the stymieing contradiction puzzling those who ponder affirmative action. The black middle class, some say, has grown so strong as to make any social remuneration for that often crass, betraying bunch redundant. They have already copped that prize for which millions of bloods gave their lives. And there are white folks poor as dirt who make even some brothers and sisters in the project look like they doing good. Oh yeah, is our reaction. Water climbing up our nervous traceries. But slavery still make it plain that black you was and black you is, no matter what you gain. So yeah, we must include class considerations so that Colin Powell's boring son do not cop at little Abner Jr.'s expense. Right on. But I leave you with this burning fact. Which Du Bois was wise enough to state, quote, many have suffered as much as we, but none of them was real estate. Beep-be-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba, be-doo-ba, boom-boom-boom-ba, beep-be-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba, beep-beep-ba, ba-doo-ba. This is for this new class of Negroes that we have. They call themselves post-civil rights Negroes. Who is these Negroes? So denied, who is 16th most richest in the clumsy known world, $511 billion a year, a buck for each tier, who is 40 or 50 million, can't count all your children. Who would scrape and crawl, lie and self-crucify to claim that ain't what they is and demand to be what they want and can't get away from, but still can't see the we that actual be. You mean yourself, brother man? The kid, the sweet loving sister, all y'all worship the fall, the disappearing boat, the racist quote, the Negro in them green boots who is dancing on your neck. What the heck, they say, they got a way to make you love it. And look out the window at your back and dream of any face but your own. Who is that, I said? That why is better. Here is a letter from one of your sons and one of your fathers, one of the beaten, misshaped by heathens, one of the hungry in the crowd of the mass of lonely, who say they are not who claim they can be, who demand to be blind, who crave from behind, who kick their own ass and be ignorant of class, though they in the back where Stevie call their name, but when they claim to be sane, they disagree with the we who could verify that same. Why? Is that the question? I asked who, when all but the knowers booked, lied or fled. Preachers shook their head, was better that I bled. Called me crazy, you too, and him who they killed and booed in Jersey for dying. They who eat your blood, murder your children, explain you into silence asylums and eternal reformatories of ugly white disaster. Nobody asked you, minority. We archived your inferiority. Your singing lacks sonority. You broke and has wiggling titties that won't buy our goods. You know what you need to know if you could. You lie, you hurt, bleeding in the hood and kneel before liars. You kneel before liars, molesters, punks, skunks, drunks, dishonest God builders, and anything wrong or glittering, pitting your life against the jewelry of scum and distortions of where you come from, got C's who get paid to act like bums. Who is you? Who is these Negroes? Who is you? Why is you? How are you doing? And who is Stanley Crouch and Skip Gates and Condoleezza Rice and Clarence Thomas and Armstrong Williams and Roy Ennis and Mobutu, Buthelezi, Colin Powell, Dushanbe, Playtoy, Ben Yesman, Ward Connolly? Who is these Negroes? The herd of new old Negro creeps. Count them in bed to go to sleep. The Negro in Haiti, whose name is actually torture. Siaga, Floyd Flake. The Negro 9 who sent Rap Brown for life. The Negro 9 who sent Rap Brown up for life. Here, I will name them. Their actual names. If you see them, spit in their face. Wrap them in Confederate flags so the world understands their disgrace. Traitor, whores, slavery, still bleeding sores. They are, Richard Wood, who would never acquit. Lynn LaCroix wants to convict, will kill. Fred Horton, who voted for death, Jill Hood. Bush bumper sticker across her mouth, this is the South. Something called Nazarene, said rap killed at some bar. Terry Walker, a snake and a Mason thrilled to be a cracker substitute. Said rap resisted arrest. Edna Moore, cops tell the truth. James Hurd, a killer, says he could forget he is biased. Ernestine Reese said Muslims don't go to heaven. William Covington, won't kill, won't acquit. Panthers are militants. Neil Brown, Republican, want to kill. Sam Jolly believes cops but wants the facts. Jennifer Price, her master's thesis, quote, kids that carry guns, unquote. Calvin Wise, former cop, ex-person, angry at SNCC, wants to convict. Clifton Thomas said, no heaven for Muslims. Who is these Negroes? Now, is them Negroes or niggers or black folks or what? And is they your sisters, your brothers, and if they ain't, why do they claim and you agree y'all is the same? Some dumb shit. Like my man Mean William used to say, skin is thin, but class will kick your ass. Da-dun, I don't know how long I want to prolong this, but there's a couple of poems I want to read, and that's it. And then I have a special guest with me who just escaped from Alcatraz. And the police are going to come in here and lock him up in a minute. But let me read a poem and then introduce my man Suntan over there. I have this poem. You know, in 2002, I was named the Poet Laureate of New Jersey. Some ignorant son of a bitch did that. Said you can't be a poetry lover. I told the governor he was going to get in trouble. But anyway, I wrote this poem right after 9/11. See, we live in Newark, but you can see the buildings from where we live on the top floor. You can see the fires and stuff. So it was frightening. And about a month after that, I wrote this poem. I started, Bush started talking about terrorism and, patriotism. And then it occurred to me that black people, we've always been here, came here in terror. If you don't believe it, I wish somebody would pick your ass up and take you somewhere to pick watermelons for 300 years. You'd find out what it was. But I thought we were always here in terror. The Klan is terror. They're hanging nooses now for you young Negroes to let you reintroduce you to the reality of America. Those nooses are saying, what's news, So anyway, I wrote this poem, and then I read it. Now, I sent it around on the net first. I got a couple of negative comments, but mostly, positive. Then I read this at the Dodge Poetry Festival to about 1,000, 1,500 people. And afterwards, I was signing books for about an hour. And then the last two people came by and said, the woman said, that was a hateful poem. And so my wife and I agreed that was some kind of wild thing. Then anyway, the next day or day after, the governor called me up and said, you have to resign, apologize, which of course I didn't do. And so then they tried to start getting rid of me as the poet laureate. They couldn't do that because they'd have to go ex post facto, go back in time. So they couldn't do that. So what they did instead is get rid of the poet laureate position so that New Jersey now is a state without a poet laureate, which means we officially ignorant. Everybody knows we don't know nothing in New Jersey, But then the governor, ironically, he had to resign a year later for having a homosexual affair, adulterous homosexual affair. But what's so weird about that is if he's gay, it seemed to me that he would just fight that. He would say, yeah, I'm gay and I'm the governor. Now what? I mean, what are they going to do? You know what I'm saying? What would they do? So it must have been something else. Anyway, he had to resign. But we have to have some distinction, so the only state with a governor who resigns because he had an adulterous homosexual affair. That's deep irony. Boom, 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 boom. Somebody blew up America. Boom, 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 boom. All thinking people oppose terrorism, both domestic and international, but one should not be used to cover the other. Somebody blew up America. They say it's some terrorist, some barbaric Arab in Afghanistan. It wasn't our American terrorists. It wasn't the Klan or the skinheads or them that blows up nigger churches or reincarnates us on death row. It wasn't Trent Lott or David Duke or Giuliani or Schundler, Helms retiring. It wasn't the gonorrhea in costume, the white sheet diseases that have murdered black people, terrorized reason and sanity, most of humanity as they pleases. They say, who say? Who do the saying? Who is them paying? Who tell the lies? Who in disguise? Who had the slaves? Who got the bucks out the bucks? Who got fat from plantations? Who genocided Indians, tried to waste the black nation? Who live on Wall Street, the first plantation? Who cut your nuts off? Who rape your ma? Who lynch your pa? Who got the tar? Who got the feathers? Who had the match? Who set the fires? Who killed and hired? Who say they God and still be the devil? Who the biggest only? Who the most goodest? Who do Jesus resemble? Who created everything? Who the smartest? Who the greatest? Who the richest? Who say you ugly and they the good looking is? Who define art? Who defined science? Who made the bombs? Who made the guns? Who bought the slaves? Who sold them? Who call you them names? Who say Dahmer wasn't insane? Who? Who stole Puerto Rico? Who stole the Indies, the Philippines, Manhattan, Australia, and the Hebrides? Who forced opium on the Chinese? Who own them buildings? Who got the money? Who think you funny? Who lock you up? Who own the papers? Who own the slave ship? Who run the army? Who the fake president? Who the ruler? Who the banker? Who? Who own the mind? Who twist your mind? Who got bread? Who need peace? Who you think need war? Who own the oil? Who do no toil? Who own the soil? Who is not a nigger? Who is so great ain't nobody bigger? Who own the city? Who own the air? Who own the water? Who own your crib? Who rob and steal and cheat and murder? Make lies the truth? Who call you uncouth? Who live in the biggest house? Who do the biggest crime? Who go on vacation anytime? Who kill the most niggers? Who kill the most Jews? Who kill the most Italians? Who kill the most Irish? Who kill the most Africans? Who kill the most Japanese? Who kill the most Latinos? Who? Who own the ocean? Who own the airplanes? Who own the malls? Who own television? Who own radio? Who own what ain't even known to be owned? Who own the owners that ain't the real owners? Who own the suburbs? Who suck the cities? Who make the laws? Who made Bush president? Who believed the Confederate flag need to be flying? Who talk about democracy and be lying? Who the beasts in Revelations? Who 666? Who decide Jesus get crucified? Who the devil on the real side? Who got rich from Armenian genocide? Who the biggest terrorists? Who changed the Bible? Who kill the most people? Who do the most evil? Who don't worry about survival? Who have the colonies? Who stole the most land? Who rule the world? Who say they good but only do evil? Who the biggest executioner? Who own the oil? Who want more oil? Who told you what you think that lady you find out is a lie? Who found Bin Laden? Maybe they Satan. Who paid the CIA? Who knew the bomb was going to blow? Who know why the terrorists learned to fly in Florida and San Diego? Who know why 5 Israelis was filming the explosion and cracking their sides at the notion? Who need fossil fuel when the sun ain't going nowhere? Who make the credit cards? Who get the biggest tax cut? Who walked out of the conference against racism? Who killed Malcolm, Kennedy, and his brother? Who killed Dr. King? Who would want such a thing? Are they linked to the murder of Lincoln? Who invaded Grenada? Who made money from apartheid? Who kept the Irish a colony? Who overthrew Chile and Nicaragua later? Who killed David Sebeco and Chris Hani, the same ones who killed Biko, Cabral, Neruda, Allende, Che Guevara, Sandino? Who killed Kabila? The ones who wasted Lumumba, Munlane, Betty Shabazz, Princess Di, Ralph Featherstone, Little Bobby, locked up Mandela, Deruba, Geronimo, Asada, Mumia, Garvey, Dashiell Hammett, Alphaeus Hutton. Who killed Huey Newton? Fred Hampton, Medgar Evers, Mikey Smith, Walter Rodney? Was it the ones who tried to poison Fidel? Who tried to keep the Vietnamese oppressed? Who put a price on Lenin's head? Who put the Jews in ovens and who helped them do it? Who said America first and okayed the yellow stars? Who killed Rosa Luxemburg, Liebknecht? Who murdered the Rosenbergs and all the good people iced, tortured, assassinated, vanished? Who got rich from Algeria, Libya, Haiti, Iran, Iraq, Saudi, Kuwait, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Palestine? Who cut off people's hands in the Congo? Who invented AIDS? Who put the germs in the Indians' blankets? Who thought up the Trail of Tears? Who blew up the Maine and started the Spanish-American War? Who got Sharon back in power? Who backed Batista, Hitler, Bilbo, Chiang Kai-shek? Who? Who decided affirmative action had to go? Reconstruction, the New Deal, the New Frontier, the Great Society. Who do Tom S. Clarence work for? Who doo-doo come out the colon's mouth? Who know what kind of skeezer is a Condoleezza? Who pay Connolly to be a wooden Negro? Who give genius awards to Homo Locus Subsidiary? Who overthrew Nkrumah, Bishop? Who poisoned Robeson? Who tried to put Du Bois in jail? Who framed Rap Brown, Jamil Al-Amin? Who framed the Rosenbergs, Garvey, the Scottsboro Boys, the Hollywood 10? Who set the Reichstag fire? Who knew the World Trade Center was going to get bombed? Who told 4,000 Israeli workers at the Twin Towers to stay home that day? Why did Sharon stay away? Who? Explosion of owl. The newspapers say the devil's face could be seen. Who make money from war? Who make dough from fear and lies? Who want the world like it is? Who want the world to be ruled by imperialism and national oppression and terror, violence and hunger and poverty? Who is the ruler of hell? Who is the ruler of hell? Who is the most powerful? Who you know ever seen God? But everybody's seen the devil. Like an owl exploding in your life and your brain and yourself, like an owl who know the devil all night, all day if you listen, like an owl exploding in fire. We hear the questions rise in terrible flame, like the whistle of a crazy dog, like the acid vomit of the fire of hell. Who? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll answer some questions a little later, but first I'd like to introduce an old criminal friend of mine who's a real fine poet that lives in your neighborhood that you maybe don't know, Marvin X. And he has a new book out, and I wanted him to mention this book. I thought I had a copy of it. It's called How to what? How to cure yourself? How to recover from the addiction to white supremacy. Now, I gave this book to our mayor, and I told him that, you should read this book. And like, if you read this book and then went to a rehab program, you might be straight. But I don't think he's going to do that because he's getting crazier and crazier. You know what I mean? Came in our town, he fired 1,200 people, raised our taxes 8%. He's got 10 police officers at the top, all white. So I thought he needed that book, I don't know if I can force him to read it. But anyway, I want Marvin X to mention that, and then I'll answer. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. Here it is. How to recover from the addiction to white supremacy from Marvin X. So Marvin, why don't you come up here and see if you can get any adherence to your cure.
Thank you, Brother Baraka. I first met Baraka about 40 years ago, 1967, when we had the Black House in San Francisco Eldridge Cleaver, myself, playwright Ed Bullens, and Sister Ethna. So Black House became the cultural center of the West Coast Black Arts movement right here in the Bay Area. This first poem is called This. I'm going to read about 3 poems, and that's it. This is not about making money, not about selling books, not about ego or fame, not about women or children, old age and sex. This is not about sin or some preacher, some holy book, or how one prays. It is a simple thing, like tears in the eyes, like working the last nerve, like standing when feet are tired, talking when silence is the desire, like showing love when hatred is behind the smile, like feeding the poor when they ask, like listening to an old woman who was homeless, like hearing the story of a mad Negro and a mad African, one after the other, like listening to street children with grills in their mouths tell stories of the spirit world. This is the daily round. This is the work unfinished, to express truth no matter who is around. And knowing truth is a circle coming round and round and round. This is not about the personal or the lover who is lost in traffic. This is not about the teacher, but the student who will learn to stand to teach what he is taught. About the comrades who will gather as peers on the street corner to save themselves. Not about the black, the white, the mixed, or the mad. It is coming together to realize life is a moment to seize or be lost in eternity. It is knowing action and reaction, passing the tone test in the presence of the beast. It is about getting through the day so one can fight tomorrow. It is about seeking knowledge above food, rent, and pleasure. Knowledge is the power that turns the universe into a ball we throw into space and time until it explodes into particles of a new world for all to see and wonder. I'm going to read this from How to Recover from the Addiction to White Supremacy. It's a poem. And I'm really trying to say in this book something that I actually dealt with in another book called Beyond Religion Toward Spirituality. But this is a continuation of the same topic, because when we talk about white supremacy, I'm talking about coming from an animal plane to a divine plane. It's real simple. All is God. God is all. God is the people. God is the cow. God is the horse. God is the tree. God is the river. God is the fish. God is the child. God is the youth. God is the old people. God is the poor. God is the rich. God is the hungry. God is the sick. God is the dope fiend. God is the alcoholic. God is the sinner. No God but God. What if there's no God but God? What if God is the captive you won't liberate? What if God is the child you won't love? What if God is the mama you hate? What if God is the daddy you hate? What if there's no God but God? What if God is the fear you won't release? What if God is the pain you won't release? What if God is the love you won't release? What if God is the tears you won't cry? What if God is the lies you tell? What if God is the mountain you won't climb? What if God is the success you won't try? What if God is the beauty you don't see? What if God is time running out the hourglass? What if God is the body you refuse to heal? What if God is the mind you refuse to feed? What if? What if God is ready when you ain't ready? What if God is ready when you get ready? What if there's no God but God? What if God is the forgiveness you won't give? What if God is the denial you drown in like a hog in slop? What if God is the peace in your house, the love in your life, the joy on your face, the happiness in your heart, the thankfulness of your smile? What if there's no God but God? What if my life and death are all for God? Not for a woman, not for a man, not over woman, not over man. My life and death are all for God. What if? What if I grieve for nothing because God is everything? What if God wants, I want? What if God don't want, I don't want? What if God has, I have? What if God don't have, I don't want? What if there's no God but God? And I'm going to end with this. Baghdad by the Bay. The surge is working. The surge is working, the general says. Why not? With Baghdad under siege. 30,000 crusaders on post. Surge is working fine. 4 million vacated their houses. The doctors, professors, scientists, all gone to Jordan, Syria, Iran. The surge is working. Uncle Abdullah is paid off in his desert tent. For now, the insurgents have switched sides. The assassins' costume changed to pimp the crusaders. After all, they must pay for every drop of blood. It is the Arab way. The surge is working. 2 hours of electricity in the best neighborhoods. Even Saddam did better than this. Billions have gone to reconstruction, a sham even Condi can explain. Blackwater cowboys ride wild, killing through the streets with immunity like they used to kill niggas. Great progress from killing niggas to killing sand niggas. The surge is working. Now you want to surge your punk ass into Iran. Go ahead, white boy, your end is near. It is sad we are here in your midst. Don't you see there's no more water? Don't you see the fire has come this time? For all your iniquities, there must be justice. This is not a pretty day. Even the night shall be ugly, and mothers shall scorn the hour of their birth and the birth of their children. For every hateful thing you have done throughout time, stealing nigger mail in the dirty South, stealing the life of black soldiers from Civil War to World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq, you must go to the cashier and cash in your chips. The surge is working. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them in about 10 minutes worth. I can't hear well, so you have to speak real loud. You know.
I'll come up and protect you. Too.
Okay. Just make sure you can hear what
Any
you really...
questions
I don't see any
for
questions.
Mr. Baraka?
No.
Yeah?
She say, what's the difference between new civil rights?
Well, yeah, the question is what Mr. Baraka's comments might be on the new civil rights movement, what that movement has to learn from the earlier civil rights movement, and yeah, is that about it? Yeah. Yeah, and what the new civil rights movement has not learned and needs to learn.
Well, there's first of all, there's no movement as yet at the 60s. That's the main problem, you know. It's impossible to kill Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Huey Newton, Stokely Carmichael did, Rab Brown sentenced to life in prison. It's impossible just to bounce back. We have to grow them again. And so you can see the whole tenor of this society is reactionary, backward. It's what Du Bois called the Sisyphus Syndrome. If you know Du Bois's works, you know about how we roll a rock up the mountain and they roll it back down our head. Well, this is rock rolling down time, you know. And the incredible thing is that Bush, you know, I mean, forget Afro-Americans, but anybody in the world, ask anybody in the world about this leadership of this country, you know, and how corrupt and backward it is. I mean, it's extraordinary. But the reason that can happen is because there is no movement. See, if there were really a movement, and I always say for the Afro-American people, we need a national organization elected democratically like a Congress, is what we tried to do in the 19th century, the Black Convention movement. We tried to do it again in the 1940s with the Negro Congress, National Negro Congress of Du Bois. And we tried to do it in the 70s, 1972, the Gary Convention. You need a national movement because there are 50 million of us. We're over $600 billion a year. And if we had a national movement, we could influence American politics. You could never have let Bush get in there in Florida. That could never happen. That would never happen. And as a matter of fact, even when Jesse started to march, Gore pulled him back. And when the little Negroes went up there in the Congress and tried to speak against that, Gore, as the president of the Senate, wouldn't allow them to speak. You see. So that's in terms of movement, that's what we need. We need a national organization, but we also need a united front with all the different nationalities in this country, because everybody is getting their butts whipped. The whole black and brown thing needs to be reconnected. You know, the whole question of progressive white people needs to be reconnected. What happened to the movement, the anti-revisionist movement of the 60s and the 70s? So there are things that we still have to do. You know, otherwise the country will go up in smoke. I mean, they talk about the axis of evil, who are all colored people. You know, it's Afghanistan, Palestine, Iraq. Who else? Lebanon. They're getting ready to go to Iran, and then they're going to go to North Korea, and then their real person is China. That's what they want. Right now they're doing a little nasty stuff, like talking about, you know, asbestos paint and stuff like that, because they're afraid of China's economy. It's the Chinese economy that threatens the United States. The Chinese economy that will control all of Asia. That's what they're really frightened of. But the point is, what are we doing? Who are we? This is the question. Are we just passive observers in our own demise? Because somebody should tell who the Iranians are. Do you ever hear of the Persians? Somebody should tell them about the Persians, the ones who kicked the Greeks' ass and Egypt's ass. That's who that is, the Persians. Bother them and they will bother you back. You understand what I'm saying? Nah, Iraq was a weak country. That's why they ran in there. Saddam Hussein. And they talk about Islamic extremism. Iraq was the only secular country in the area. That's why you have trouble with those Kurds and the Shia and the Sunni. Because that's what Saddam was doing. And I'm not praising Saddam, but I know this. He didn't have no shit going on like going on now. You see. And $500 billion? And you got people sleeping in the streets? People uneducated? I mean, what is that? I mean, I'm not, you know, that's my view of it. What are we doing? That's what I'm saying, you know. So what you gonna do? What we gonna do next? We're gonna elect Bill 2, right? To be the president. And what is that gonna be? What did Bill 1 do? What's Bill 2 gonna do? That's what it is. You come back in a different disguise, but it's gonna be the same thing. Yes? We'll raise consciousness. That's what the poet's supposed to do. You're supposed to raise consciousness. That's why you have to step on people's toes, because you have to say, that is a lie. This is the truth. See, and that's the job that get you killed, or at least leave you poor. You see, but that's the job. That's the job. What is Keats? You know Keats and Du Bois, what did they say? Only thing that we have to pay attention to is what? Truth and beauty. Now, that's a hard line in America. Imagine that, truth and beauty in America. Figure that out. You know. But the question is now, since this is not a kind of insurgent period, a revolutionary period, this is no longer the period when Mao talked about revolution is the main trend in the world today. This is not true today. Reaction is the main trend in the world today. Neo-fascism is the main trend in the world today. All those organizations in the 60s and the 70s no longer exist. Those young communist organizations that I was a member of too, they no longer exist. Those nationalist organizations that existed in the 60s and 50s no longer exist. So what are you going to do? The SDS don't exist. You understand? The League for Revolutionary Struggle don't exist. You know, RU exists, but what are they doing? You know. Yes, sir. What do you say? What is my...
The question was, what is Mr. Baraka's proudest literary achievement and of the past, and what is the literary achievement from Mr. Baraka that we can look forward to?
Okay. Well, my greatest achievement is staying alive. I'll tell you that. That's the main. That's the main. And that's taking a lot of work. That's my son. That's our youngest son there, who's, 34 years old. So that's the hardest work. I think my greatest literary achievement, like all authors, are always egotistical enough to say the last thing. That's what you always say. In terms of what is next, I have 2, maybe 3 books coming out next year. One is called Digging, the Afro-American Soul of American Classical Music, which is essays from the 80s till today. One is called Razor, Revolutionary Art for Cultural Revolution, which is about that. What is revolutionary art and how do we make cultural revolution? Why do we need a cultural revolution? Now I have another book that I'm trying to prepare now called Unity and Struggle, which is political essays. And I'm working on a novel called Negrosity, which I read. So, I figure now that I'm getting, past my 50s, past my 60s, past my 70s, that I better get this work out, and there's so much of it. I have so much work that it's time. I want to be like Marvin when I grow up, really publishing a lot of books. Because we got a lot of stuff. We've been here a long time, so we got a lot of work. The question is to get it out, And for you young writers, I'd say the word is don't let anybody constipate you. Even if it's Kinko's, get it out. Do it yourself. Do it yourself. Don't wait to be discovered. Get it out. Make your reputation in quote yourself. Yes. Other questions? Yes.
It's an honor to meet you.
Thank you.
I'm a non-traditional student, having come back to study history here at Berkeley, but I'm from New York City originally, and you helped me come into my consciousness when I was in high school. I was going to an all-white private school in Manhattan, and I had to do a senior paper, and I did it on your book, Totally White
Blues people.
It was a totally white private school where people like Leonard Bernstein's daughter attended, and I was like the second African American to graduate. And I read some of your work, and I decided to write a paper. And it not only raised my consciousness as an African American, I think it raised the consciousness of my fellow students and teachers, because they were totally shocked that I would come and do a presentation on your work in that environment back in the 70s. But I guess I wanted to just ask you about your thoughts on Africa and African Americans and our relationship with Africa. I just recently come back from a trip to Ghana and was very concerned with the level of poverty that you see there.
Yeah.
And I just want to know what kind of thoughts you have on what we as
Yeah.
African Americans can do as far as helping out in international situations like that, particularly in Africa.
Well, first of all, what you see in Africa is a continuation of colonialism. The colonials never left. They've got Negroes in place, more Negrosity, but colonialism still impoverishes that. Africa was better off in the 60s, actually, in the early 70s, because at least they were fighting. You had MPLA and the rest of those organizations. They were really fighting. It was armed struggle. But remember, again, you lose Nyerere and Touré, Cabral, Sebeko, they kill all those people. Biko. The point of that was to establish what you see, a static. You should read in Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the Kenyan author, Ngugi. You should read his book. He's got a new book called Wizard of the Crow that lays out what the modern neo-colonial African state is. And it's connected to this because that's what's happening here in Newark. Now, in black cities. Remember, black people live in 27 cities in the main, where there are pluralities and majorities. They have almost $600 billion a year, the 16th largest gross national product in the world. But what are you doing with it? You see, but the Africa thing is always tied to us. When the black movement in the 60s and 70s was at its peak, so was Africa, you know, and that Pan-Africanism has to be reignited, the whole Pan-African. I was at the last real Pan-African Congress, 1974, Dar es Salaam, and Nyerere and Touré gave their definition of what Pan-Africanism was. It says the worldwide struggle of African people against imperialism. Now that's clear. You know, a lot of people disagree with that because they've got these kind of atavists and kind of cultural nationalist definitions, but that definition is clear. The struggle of black people all over the planet. And wherever you go, if you travel, you find that we're on the bottom everywhere. You know, but here in the United States, where you're the richest and the best educated black people on this planet, you are the leaders of the Pan-African movement. You know, it wasn't a coincidence that Du Bois and even Marcus Garvey were leaders of that. You know, I mean, it's important, you know, that we understand not only Africa but the Caribbean, that we understand the Pan-American connection. You know how many African peoples are in Puerto Rico, Cuba, you know, Haiti. That's one of the reasons that Cuba is so strong. You know, Fidel goes to Oriente, the East, to get his election because it looks like Harlem, looks like Haiti, you know, in Cuba. So that depends, Africa depends on its internal, you know, development naturally. That's always principle, but it also depends on how much that we can connect again in a Pan-African kind of struggle. Pan-American and Pan-African is what it depends. Because, like I said, we lost a lot of people, you know, and how do you rebuild that? You know, the youngest ones in the movement that I know, who were they? Huey Newton dead, Stokely Carmichael dead, Rap Brown locked up, life imprisonment in Atlanta, now in Colorado. So it's a very important thing. And it's a generation, the generation that's come now to maturity. They've got so much responsibility, you know. So other questions that I can answer? Okay.
One more, and then
yeah.
we're going to let Mr. Baraka eat and rest.
Good point.
Thank you so much for coming. I was struck last year studying writing in New York in the late 50s and early 60s by how much of a focal figure you were in shaping taste through your work as an editor. I'm thinking particularly of Clothing Bear and Yugen, but other presses as well. And I'm wondering what relationship you see between the work that you've done as an editor and founders presses and the work that you do as a poet.
Well, to tell you the truth, when I first came back from Puerto Rico to New York, expecting to find the world-class intellectuals in New York, which was actually not true, although there were a couple of people who were great, a guy named Alan Polite, Allen Ginsberg, who were the reason I started the magazine Yugen, because I wanted to get published. So I figured the best way to get published is publish myself. That's what I'm telling you, you know. So I started that magazine. I wrote to Ginsberg. He gave me the names of all these people. Alan Polite gave me the list of all the black folks. I had the black folks and the white folks. And so I started contacting them. And because I contacted them, not only did I understand their work, what they were doing, and how it influenced my work, you see, but then I've developed a kind of network of understanding. So the editorial work is always important, and I edited several magazines since then, and now the newspaper Unity and Struggle, though we've had some ideological struggles in the last year, it's going to take us a while to get that out. But it's very important that you put out stuff. You have to somehow balance, you have to have a superstructure that balances the crazy media. You know, when you look at TV or look at what's the bestsellers list, read that garbage, all of that garbage on there. And, I mean, it influences our people. All people in the United States influenced by that. All people influenced by that, you know. I mean, it's incredible, man. I see people, I was looking around to see, I see people walking around with these skull and crossbones. I mean, you know, y'all want to have a skull and crossbone, that's cool. But I see black people walking around with skull and crossbones. Don't you know that's how you got here? Don't you know that? You know what that is? But it just shows you that level, that, what was that, Johnny Depp in Into the World? I never saw all of that, but the influence. I mean, I saw a dignified looking white woman over there. Well, I don't want to say where I saw her, but she was over there. She had a necklace made of them the skull and crossbones on this campus. So my God, you know, I mean, this stuff penetrates everywhere. What does she think that is? What does she think? Does she know what pirates were? You understand? Does she know what do they call them people? Privateers. Elizabeth made those privateers. You know, it's incredible. The first one was what? The good ship Jesus. You know, Sir John Hawkins. Don't y'all understand? But that's history. You're a history major. Get on that. You know. But I was just saying the influence of the media on us. You see yourself, you'll hear yourself saying something, and if you think it, you say, no, but that's stupid. Why am I saying that? You know, or you walking down the street saying, you know, I ain't no good, I'm ugly, I hate myself. Why? Because of the rhythm. You like it. You know, you know, it sounds good, you know, so, you know. But, so the question of putting out not just intelligent, but radical, revolutionary materials is very important, still very important, you know. I got some books here, and so does the bookstore. I have some books. I only got a few that we would like to sell, so thank you very much.